The piece I'm going to talk about today appears along with 4 other original compositions and 3 of my arrangements of tunes by Peter Erskine in my new book, Composing and Arranging for the Contemporary Big Band, published by Advanced Music Blinds. And I literally just got the first copy that I've seen in my hand from the editor that helped get this finished for us, and I'm anxious to look through it myself, actually. The book includes complete condensed C scores of all the pieces and a copy of the CD Prism, featuring the WDR Big Band of Cologne, Germany, and drummer Peter Erskine. Advanced Music is exhibiting here, so you can see the book at their booth and look through it at your leisure. The first jazz writing course at Eastman is a course in tune writing. I select 4 jazz composers whose tunes are exceptional from the standpoint of musical craftsmanship and individual creativity. We always begin with tunes of the pianist Bill Evans. The tunes of Bill Evans represent an organic blending of elements from jazz and the Great American Songbook. His tunes also present a wide variety of forms and a wide variety of strategies for developing basic thematic ideas or motives. And the harmonic vocabulary includes the full range of possibilities from those found in 18th and 19th century classical music to those favored by jazz musicians and the best popular songwriters. From time to time, I've come up with some successful music of my own simply by doing the assignments I give to the students in my writing classes. During the mid-1980s, I wrote a tune that was inspired by Evans' techniques, using his classic jazz waltz Very Early as a model. Very Early has an AAB form consisting of 3 16-bar sections. The melody is developed from just one thematic motive. And the primary harmonic motion in Very Early is a series of 5-1 progressions through chromatically distant major tonalities, C, E flat, D flat, D, and B. So if anybody's not familiar with Very Early, I'll just play the A section, you'll get the idea. I decided to maintain some of Evans' choices in my own jazz waltz using an AAB form with 16-bar sections and a single thematic motive and extensive use of 5-1 cadences in chromatically distant keys. There are, however, 2 choices that helped Elegy to sound quite different from Very Early. First, since all the key centers of Very Early were major keys, I emphasized mostly minor keys in the A sections. The somewhat brooding or melancholy mood that developed eventually suggested the title Elegy, as Evans had passed away just a few years earlier. Second, I discovered an evocative thematic motive that had a substantially different character from the one that permeates the Evans tune. It consisted of just 3 notes, a half step up followed by a large ascending leap. Due to time limitations here, I'll only be able to present a small portion of the information about this tune and the arrangement for big band that developed from it. Additional analytical details and a more thorough discussion of arranging, orchestration techniques, and other items are included in the analysis found in the book. So now I'm going to play the melody and basic chord progression of my tune Elegy. You might not be able to see it all here, but you'll see the end of it as I move up to discuss it. And then I'll talk a little bit about how the musical development evolved as I was writing it. My own lead sheet to start. In the first 4 bars of the A section, the motive moves up a half step from the first 2-bar phrase to the next. So that's the first thing here. Oh. As the harmony moves in contrary motion from A minor to C7 and F minor, concluding on A flat 7. The dominant chords resolve to minor chords whose root descend in major thirds, A, F, C sharp, or D flat. The initial 2-bar motive is then extended to 4 bars as the melody in bars 7 and 8 descends stepwise from F sharp to C, filling in some of the gap created by the large leap at the beginning of the phrase. Instead of C sharp minor, the chord in bar 5 is half diminished, C sharp minor with a lowered 5th. This begins a minor 2-5 that leads to B major 7, which ascends to C7 in contrary motion to the melody. The rhythm of bars 7 and 8 contrasts the opening rhythm, emphasizing the second beat. The second 8 bars have the same phrase structure and rhythm as the first 8. The C7 chord in bar 8 leads to F minor, so the first 2-bar phrase returns to the material from bars 3 and 4 in the first section. However, this time the A flat 7 chord in bar 10 leads to D flat major instead of C sharp half diminished. And the ascending leap here is widened to an octave. Instead of modulating in major third relationships as in the first 8 bars, the G7 chord now leads to a 2-5-1 cadence in B flat. The 4-bar phrase in bars 13 and to 16 partially fills in the gap created by the octave leap. Mirroring the tritone motion from D flat major to G7, the B flat major 7 at the end of the phrase moves to E7 minus 9, which leads back to A minor in the repeat of the A section. So it ends, first A ends like this. And then back to A minor again. In the second ending, the melody fills in the missing F from measures 13 to 15. So you notice, sorry. So you notice when you're coming down from the high note, get A flat to G, and it skips to E flat, and then D, C, B. So one of the things that gave me a different idea for the second ending was noticing that gap. And in the second ending, this E flat to D starts moving up to F and E, and then continues the ascending motion in the B part, going to G, A flat, and then the high point, A natural. From bar 15 to 21, the bass line descends in half steps in a sequence of alternating major 7th and dominant 7th chords as the melody gradually ascends. When the high A is reached, the descending 5th from F to B flat on the bass line creates the widest interval between the melody and bass line at the melody's highest point. The final 8 bars, well, let me play that first again. The final 8 bars of the B section, beginning at bar 26, remain in the key of E flat. However, the deceptive resolution of B flat 7 in bar 31 to B major enables the continuation in the circle of force to E7, and then back to A minor to begin the next chorus. So after we get to the climactic point, the tune finishes like this. I want to move it up that, yeah, so we can see the bottom of the page. That'd be great. Okay, so I'll start on on the B section, A flat major 7 there. Now you know we're in E flat and we stay there. Okay, so that's how the tune works. Well, we'll switch to the sketch score of the big band arrangement. In the big band arrangement of Elegy, all the introductory, transitional, and developmental material was suggested by content that was already present in the theme. I decided that since this piece was inspired by the legacy of Bill Evans, it should feature our pianist, Frank Chastanier. This choice led me to the idea of an unaccompanied piano statement of the theme, followed by a second complete statement by the ensemble. The range of the melody in the A section, let's go back to the lead sheet one more time. The range of the melody in the A section was suitable for the saxophones, and since the highest note was the highest normal note on the alto, that high A flat there, I decided to use soprano saxophone for the lead. That gave the high A flat in bar 12 a more mellow timbre, and it put the soprano in the best range for expressing the lyrical and relaxed character that I wanted. The first half of the B section was in a great range for the brass, and the color of 5 flugelhorns instead of trumpets for most of the piece really suited the introspective and sometimes wistful mood. Now we'll go on to the score. So here you see the first page of Elegy as it appears in the book, and you can see there's text underneath, but in the subsequent pages, just to save space and make it easier to focus on the score, I took out the text, but each piece goes through in that manner where you get 6 or 8 measures of the content in the condensed C score and then analytical commentary underneath. So the function of the introduction in Elegy is to set up the unaccompanied piano statement of the theme, beginning with the saxophones alone and then adding the brass and rhythm section just for the last few bars. Seemed like a convincing gesture to introduce the soloist. The thematic motive comes from bars 23 and 24 of the lead sheet, the part that went like this. Just after the high point. So this. By interpolating a B flat between the G and A flat, the second measure becomes a sequence of the first. Noticing that the pitches on beat 1 of these measures begin a motion through the circle of force, D to G, I decided to just continue this motion by transposing these 2 measures down a step, so that the opening melody notes on beat 1 of the first 5 bars emphasize D, G, C, F, and finally B flat. The harmonization of bars 1 to 5 illustrate one type of linear writing, harmonizing the first note with any voicing of choice, and then moving this voicing chromatically up or down by half steps while the lead line proceeds on its own way, independent of the harmony. Ellington and Strayhorn were both fond of this technique. The introduction in Ellington's Concerto for Cootie from 1940 is one of the many beautiful examples. It goes like this. Melody against that. While beat 2 of bars 1 and 3 and beat 1 of bars 2 and 4 create passing tensions, they resolve convincingly as the phrase continues. So this is what those voicings sound like. E flat 7. And the effect of landing on E flat 7 in bar 5 and then moving up to the dominant of A minor E7 at the end of the introduction evokes a feeling of ascension. So when you get to that E flat 7 chord, you go from here to this. This is also emphasized by the ascending brass line. Their line in bar 6, D flat, G flat, E flat, the lead line. And D flat, G flat, E flat is an augmentation of the lead line from the first bar. Becomes. And the C pickup introduces the ascending half step, which is the main interval of the theme. So tacking this note on also gives you a little preview of that main interval of the theme, the ascending half step. Now, the most direct resolution of this G natural in the lead of the brass section in the context of continued harmonic motion would be to go up to the root or down to the fifth of an A chord like this. Colorful, since the first note, D sharp, temporarily delays that resolution to E, so you get to this final brass chord. And then, so you have to wait for that resolution. In bars 9 to 14, so I guess we can go on to the next page there. Yeah, okay. The piano voicings are economical, maintaining a 5-voice texture with no double notes, except for the melody doubles the chord root or bass note. Even though I'm an improvising pianist myself, I often prefer to give the specific voicings and accompaniment when the solo piano states important thematic material. This makes it possible for the content of the ensemble statements and the solo piano statements to be more fully integrated in terms of harmonic language. This is how the first A section sounds as stated by the solo piano. So you'll notice that there's already some decoration of the basic chords that I played when I played through just the harmonies from the lead sheet. This sounds like this. Bar 15, the main harmony B major 9 is decorated with a C major 7 on beat 1. So it sounds like this. Instead of just the B chord, you get this effect. The C7 in bar 16 is set up with the major 7th in the left hand on beat 1, leading to the minor 7th on beat 2. This descending half-step motion shadows the movement of the melody, as does the second line, A to A flat. So instead of just C7, instead of just this, it's B, sorry. Instead of just this, still the same 2 chords, but just decorated differently. This implied major 7th chord with the lowered 9th is really a C altered dominant chord with a non-harmonic tone. So in bar 16, the left hand B functions as an accented passing tone between the 9th of the B major chord and the 7th of C7. These decorations of the basic harmony sound as colorful as substitute chords, while clearly maintaining the sense of the original progression. Bars 17 to 20 return to the more basic 5-part harmony. So they sound like this. Measures 21 to 26 24 decorate the original chords in a manner similar to bars 15 and 16. So where the original sounded like this, you get a little more decoration. In bars 25 to 32, the second A section, the inner harmony notes are played on beat 2, and this creates a more pronounced waltz feeling. Bars 26 and 28 decorate the basic harmonies heard in bars 10 and 12 with some eighth note motion in the second voice of the treble clef. And in these measures, it sounds as though the harmony is a little blurred on beat 2 and then comes into focus on beat 3. In bars 31 and 32, the ascending eighth note line in the left hand creates some additional motion that leads to the beginning of the next phrase in bar 33. So here's that next 8 bars. And then measures 33 to 40 decorate the original harmonies in a similar manner. Comparing bars 37 to 39 and 21 to 24 show how the same basic progression, 2-5-1 B flat, can be harmonically transformed without actually changing the basic underlying progression. So in the first A section, when you got to that spot, it sounded like this. There in the second 8, it sounds like this. And we go on to the B section. The contrary motion in the left hand in bar 49 results in a passing minor ninth dissonance between G and A flat, which resolves in bar 50. While the dissonance created by the B natural, that note from before that created the dissonance on the C7, draws attention again to the resolution to C7 on beat 2. So this is what bars 49 to 52 sound like. Piano there. There's that. So again, it's that same note, but instead of just by itself, it's shadowed by another voice, a major second below. So this becomes different color. Then the eighth note motion becomes more insistent in bars 41 to 46, which further emphasizes the climactic point of the melody in bar 45 and allows for a feeling of repose in the measures that follow. The chromatic motion in bar 42 is expanded to 2 voices in bar 44, where the texture is thickened from 5 to 6 voices. This gives further impact to the thematic high point, after which the 5-voice texture is resumed. So this is what the last 8 bars sound like in the solo piano statement. I made a couple more remarks about the minor ninths actually. Some of my minor ninth intervals, some of the older school writing arranging books always told you to avoid minor ninth intervals, but when you actually start transcribing some interesting music, starting with Duke Ellington, even in the 30s, you start discovering all these things that you're not supposed to do, and they sound great. So I said minor ninth intervals can be musically effective and highly evocative, provided that the particular dissonance they make is exactly the one that's desired, and so long as they're resolved convincingly. Because you find in the music of the best chromatic composers, whether it's Ellington or Shostakovich, they don't just use dissonance for shock effect, but they, when there's a dissonance, it's because they want to draw your attention, and if you listen, you'll hear why they did that. So Some of my favorite examples include Las Vegas Tango from the Gil Evans album, The Individualism of Gil Evans. That's the one that has this theme. Another is the introduction of Bob Brookmeyer's arrangement of Willow Weep for Me from the album presenting Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, and the Jazz Orchestra, which starts with this. And the title tune from the Claire Fisher album, Extension. In bars 53 and 54, the voicings of F minor 9 and F minor 7 minus 5 over B flat are approached chromatically parallel to the melody. In bar 55, the quadruplet quarter notes in the left hand add emphasis to the descending whole step in the melody, and the rhythmic momentum adds impact to the harmonic tension on the downbeat of bar 56. And that's another place where we have one of those dominant voicings that begins with the major seventh as a non-harmonic tone. So get the so again, there's a tension. That's there so that you hear this. One of the most valuable things that I discovered through my own transcription and study of the music of Claire Fisher is that creative embellishments of the same basic harmonic progression often sound much more colorful and are much more effective in conveying a sense of meaningful harmonic motion than reliance on so-called harmonic substitution. An arbitrary substitution of chords that happen to fit the individual melody notes can easily sound like a mere succession of chords rather than a harmonic progression. The word progression suggesting being in one place and then moving to another in a logical or orally convincing way. Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn clearly understood this when they arranged popular songs of the day or rearranged popular hits from the orchestra's repertoire. The best arrangers and composers can make the most conventional progressions sound brand new by the ways in which they decorate them. In the second A section of the saxophones, from bar 73 to 88, the rhythm and articulation of, oh, okay, I got ahead of myself. Talk about the saxophone harmonization first. There you go. Throughout the restatement of the first two A sections by the saxophones, the same basic harmonic progression is decorated in a still different manner. In both the piano and saxophone statements, I tried several possible harmonic embellishments until I found those which, to my ears, created the strongest continuity and conveyed the mood I was looking for. In my book, many of the basic sources for different types of five-note voicings are clarified in relation to this harmonization for the saxophones. Having heard the two A sections of the solo piano statement, it should be clear that the two A sections of the saxophones maintain the same basic harmonic progression, but still sound fresh and unpredictable just by using slightly thicker harmonies and by decorating the harmonies with subtle differences in chromatic voice leading. In the first A section, the rhythm of the melody is varied slightly, conveying more swing feeling, while the second A section decorates the melody as well as the rhythm. For now, we'll go on to where the brass comes in. In the second A, you'll see they have some responsive chords there. The rhythm and articulation of the brass chords complement the melodic content of the saxophones while reinforcing their harmonic colors. The lead line of harmonic backgrounds or responses should have some melodic quality of its own. Here, where the content is sparse, the lead line moves up in minor thirds and back again. On that page, you see in the last two voicings, the C is the lead note, and then when we go on to the next page, you could see goes up to D sharp or E flat, then F sharp, and back down to E flat, and back down to C, before it moves up stepwise from D flat to D. So there's a little melodic thing there that's intended, even though it's just a sparse background. In terms of voicings, the trombones state the basic chord qualities, while the flugelhorns add extensions and altered tones. The brass chords at the end of this page, right there, the last bar, are actually pickups to the B section where the brass state the thematic material for the first time. And notice here, just before we go on, that the guitar comes in with those brass pickups. Sometimes I like to use the guitar to just add color to a brass ensemble by doubling the lead trumpet line an octave below, or sometimes a similar effect with doubling the lead line of a saxophone octave unison line. Just adds another color, and then it gives the guitar a different function, so that often the guitar and piano, if you have both in an ensemble, it's good to have specific things for them to do, because if you just write chord symbols and don't say anything to them, they usually just automatically comp at the same time, and it usually doesn't always sound that good. Unless it's Bill Evans and Jim Hall. The saxophone counterline here, next page. There you can see the brass have the tune there. They're playing this material. Playing that. The sax counterline echoes the descending whole step from the brass melody. So you can see after the brass play G and F, the line that the saxophones have has a lot of descending whole steps in it as well. Yeah. So after this, so they're reinforcing the whole steps in the brass statement of the theme and drawing your attention again to these ascending half steps. But now instead of being the main content, now they're just afterthoughts in this counter line that the saxophones play. The saxophone voicings in bars 97 to 102. So after the brass play the B part, the saxes come in and state the last 8 bars of the B. The brass play the first 8, and the saxes play the last 8. The switch from brass to saxophones at this spot was practical for 2 reasons. First of all, the register of the melody gets a bit low for full brass harmonization, and I didn't want the level of intensity that would have resulted from a brass harmonization in the next higher octave. Second, I intended to follow the theme with a full ensemble interlude leading to the solo piano improvisation with the brass as the lead section. So it's going to be more effective after the brass haven't been heard for a few bars. In working out an interlude that would set up the improvised piano solo, the first thing that seemed effective was to sustain the B-flat 7th chord of the theme and delay the resolution up a half step to B-flat to B or C-flat until the beginning of the interlude. So at the end of the theme, you hear this. It resolves right away, and then we're right back to A minor. So by extending that B-flat 7, now the beginning of the interlude. And I also noticed when I did that, that it gave that same chord a completely different meaning as a new starting point, instead of just a brief surprise on the way back to A minor again. The top line of the first 3 brass voicings is actually the end of the theme. So if you remember, the theme ended like this. So the brass interlude starts with this. Really the same material as the end of the theme, and develops that sequentially. So the lead line there continues down in whole steps, in contrast to the descending whole step motive at the beginning of the B section of the theme, which moved up chromatically. So in the B section of the theme, you hear the whole steps doing this. Moving up. In the interlude, they just keep moving down. However, I found the idea of simply moving the harmony and parallel whole steps to be too predictable and harmonically bland in relation to what had occurred in the piece up to this point. So after some experimentation with some other possibilities, I noticed that a G-flat major chord complemented the E-flat between the F and the D-flat or C-sharp, and it resulted in contrary motion to the G Lydian voicing at the end of bar 106. So just adding that one thing in, it detracts from the basically chromatic parallel motion and gives it a little harmonic twist. So instead of just this, you get this. Saxophone motive in bar 105 and 106. Let's see. Yeah. Is it's an abbreviated variant of the line from bars 90 and 91. So when the brass were playing the theme, let's go back to the previous page. A little higher there. The saxes had this idea. Okay, then back to the next part. Now that's been shortened just to emphasize the half step up to. And then the end of the interlude seemed like the right place for another one of those dominant seventh chords with the passing major seventh to kind of keep that thing recurring. So when it goes into the piano solo, it does this. Now there are other lines you can see that move because it's a thicker chord there. And the saxophone line there, it ends up on this F, B flat, G. So, that's a variation of the end of the introduction. We have this sax chord, breath. So now, here we have. Just reuse that again, leading to the piano solo. Okay, the piano solo consists of one full chorus to begin with, and when we got to the end of the form, we resolved to the B major 7 right when it comes in the theme, but instead of stretching out the B flat 7 and having the B major chord come later, this time we got to the B major chord, but then that B major chord started the next event instead of being the last two bars of an 8-bar phrase. So it does this. If I relate it to the melody, okay? So a new event starts in an unexpected place because you've gotten used to these 8-bar phrases. So. Starting a new phrase in an unexpected place is an effect that was often used by Duke Ellington, beginning as early as the groundbreaking 1937 composition Diminuendo and Crescendo in Blue. He does both things in that. And, sometimes where you have the turnaround at the last two bars of a blues chorus, which often begins with the tonic and then goes 1-6-2-5 or 3-6-2-5. Instead of using those two bars, he just starts the next chorus there. And in the beginning of the crescendo part, he went the opposite direction And when he got to that last 2 bars, he had stop time, a little fanfare in the brass, da 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 da, but instead of 2 bars, 4 bars. So then that chorus became 14 bars instead of 10 bars. And all those different ways of fooling around with phrase structures. Okay, then.
About 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to close. One thing I found that was really interesting is, let's go to the shot chorus. I'll just say a couple things about that, and then we'll listen to the piece. In the shout chorus, instead of having the melody like this, those first 2 notes are set up with the pickup line in the saxes, so that's the end of the phrase instead of the beginning. And then because the brass chords that respond are always in an ascending major 7th with the 2nd saxophone note, that suggests the theme. And then one of the things I like to use too, I got from Ellington and Clare and Bill Holm and a lot of different people, is when you use blue notes in the key of the music, they can completely jar against the chord that's happening. So when you get to that B 7th chord here, the brass are playing F sharp 7 altered, but the 2nd trumpet and the saxophones have major 7th, F natural. We're going F sharp 7 to B major, so we're briefly in the area of B major. And that, when you hear that, you hear it sounds like a blue note in the key. So the other thing that happens there is that after hearing this over and over, you expect that, so when the saxes do, and then they resolve their blue note. Okay, the other thing is this piece ends like Kids Are Pretty People, although it's a completely different kind of piece. A lot of you know that jazz pieces in minor often end on dominant 7th on the 4th degree in the minor key. Like Kids ends with the 2-bar bass solo, and then so this does something similar. And actually, when you hear the B flat 7 to E flat minor, that's actually the first time that's happened in the piece, because it's always gone from here to here. So at the end, you finally get to the E flat minor, but it doesn't end there. Instead, one more gesture of the opening and a little piano solo at the end. So here's Elegy with the WDR Big Band and Frank Chastanier and piano. And Peter Erskine, who's here. It's great to get to use some of Peter's tunes. Yeah, there he is. And Bill, yeah. Peter created a ton of the juice for this, and it's the way the whole band sounds. A lot of it is due to the amazing way in which he's able to sometimes play half of what most drummers would play in a big band and make it sound twice as effective. So it's really great to have him involved in that, and I think you'll enjoy the versions of his tunes that we did as well. So.